Om Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Saka Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Sri Dakshinamurti Sudeshi Kendram Dvaipayanam Sutrakritam Munindram Sri Shankaram Bhashyakritam Yatindram Maddeshi Kanchapi Namami Vityai Om Namo Brahma Dibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Vamsa Rishibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhyaha Sarvopaplavarahita Prajnana Ganaha Pratyagarto Brahmaivaham Asmi Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshiniim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayiniim Ambattvamanusandathami Bhagavad Gite Bhavatveshiniim Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindaya Tapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipah Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Gita Mritaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dugdha Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gita Mritam Mahat Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Bhishma Drona Tata Jayadrata Jala Gandhara Nilotpala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Velakula Ashwattama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Kalupandavai Rananadi Kaivartakah Keshavah Parasharya Vachassaroja Mamalam Gitartha Gandotkatam Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikata Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadairaharaha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyat Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pragvamsina Shreyase Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yatkrupatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunmanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sanga Padakramo Panishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na Vidussura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Om Krishnaya Paramatmane Namaha. Pranams everyone. So last week we had seen all the 20 values that Bhagavan had given in chapter 13. And those 20 values, Bhagavan calls them as Jnanam in that chapter. So he says, Etat Jnanam iti proktam. These values are called as Jnanam. What are those 20 values? We'll just quickly do a summary, quick recap. Amanitvam. Amanitvam is basically humility or not seeking recognition. That is Amanitvam. Then Adambitvam. Adambitvam is simplicity or being non-pretentious. Adambitvam. Then Ahimsa. Ahimsa is basically not hurting others at all three levels. Physically, verbally and mentally. Ahimsa. Then we saw Kshanti. Kshanti has got multiple meanings. We saw one is basically Titiksha, forbearance or endurance, ability to withstand difficult situations. And then Ksama. Ksama is basically forgiveness, the ability to forgive others. That is considered, both of them come under Kshanti. Then Aarjavam. Aarjavam is basically uprightness, or we can say straightforwardness. Straightforwardness, the definition is basically when our body, when our mind, action and the words are aligned, then it is called as Aarjavam. The opposite of it is Vakram. And we also saw that Satyam is a subset of this Aarjavam. That is Aarjavam, that is 5. Then the sixth one is Acharyopasanam. Acharyopasanam, which is nothing but Guru Seva, doing Seva to the Guru. That was sixth one. Then Saucam. Seventh one was Saucam. Saucam was basically purity, both external purity as well as internal purity. Both purity around us, cleanliness around us, cleanliness in the mind as well. That is Saucam. And what is the cleanliness in the mind? Basically, no raga dvesham, no kama krodha lobha moham. Then Sthairyam. Sthairyam is basically steadfastness. Ability to actually, in this journey, we will keep failing, we will keep falling down, but we should not lose our steadfastness. We should be focused on the goal. Sthairyam. Then Atma Vinigraha. Atma Vinigraha, basically we saw that to be the discipline of body and mind. Basically Shamaha and Damaha. In we being disciplined, being control, having control over the body and sense organs. That is Atma Vinigraha. Then Indriyarthe Vairagyam. Indriyarthe Vairagyam is basically the dispassion on sensory pleasures. Again, we saw that it is not about creating an aversion. It is about ability to overcome that addiction, overcome that attachment. That is Indriyarthe Vairagyam. So those are the 10. Then the 11th one we saw as Anahankaraha. Anahankaraha means without that Garvam, without this, basically this non-identification of the body, not identifying ourselves with this body. Anahankaraha. Then the 12th one was Dukha Dosha Anudarshanam. Dukha Dosha Anudarshanam. Basically pondering over the misery of samsara. Samsara, the problem is we have to Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadi Dukha Dosha Anudarshanam. The samsara's creation, what is samsara? Samsara is basically this birth-death cycle. And this birth-death cycle, there is a lot of dukkham. And that is a dosha. And that we have to keep pondering about. That was value 12 that Bhagavan mentioned. Then 13th he said Asaktihi. Asaktihi is basically absence of any attachment. Not getting attached to anything. Then Anabhishvangaha. Anabhishvangaha was 14th one. Anabhishvangaha, in particular, Bhagavan mentioned about Putra Dhara Grihadishu. Putra, which is basically sons, daughters, children. Dhara, spouse. Griha means house or possessions, etc. Absence of having this sense of this is mine, that absence of this sense of mineness, we can say, with regards to all these things. That is Anabhishvangaha. Then 15th value he said Samachittatvam. Samachittatvam means constant equipoise. Constant equipoise of the mind, and when both in favorable and unfavorable conditions. Both when it is actually favorable to our body, unfavorable to our body. When we are weak physically, that time also we should be equipoised. We should not get angry, we should not get upset. When mentally we are weak also, we should be able to take it. Because we should be able to understand that mind is also an object given to us. So Samachittatvam, it was 15. Then 16th was Bhakti. And Bhakti, Bhagavan had actually mentioned, it has to be complete, it had to be unswerving devotion towards Bhagavan. So that is Bhakti. That was 16. Then 17 was Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. Vivikta Desha Sevitvam we saw as seeking solitude. Seeking solitude, devoid of basically not just people, but also devoid of Saucam, basically where it is clean. We have to look for a clean place, and devoid of Abhayam. We should not have any fear. We should not say seeking solitude and then sit in a place and then be afraid of things that we are alone. So seeking solitude, Vivikta Desha Sevitvam. Then 18th was Arati Jana Samsadi, not desiring people's company. And we saw what kind of people? Basically anybody who are either adharmic or even materialistic. Even if they are materialistic, avoiding their company, being in satsanga. That is Arati Jana Samsadi. Then we saw 19th to be Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam, bringing forth the benefit of this knowledge of truth. This truth, what is the benefit that it is going to give us? What is the Jivan Mukti Lakshana? What is the Videha Mukti Lakshana? We have to keep bringing it again and again in our mind to understand what is the benefit that we are going to get being in this path. That is Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. And then finally the 20th one was Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam. Basically constant and complete Atma Vichara. What is Atma? What is Anatma? What is Drik Drishya Viveka? What is this Pancha Kosha Lakshana? Pancha Kosha Vilakshana? What is this all the Atma Vichara concepts, we have to do it Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. That is basically Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam. So those are the 20 values that Bhagavan had given. And as Swami Dayananda used to say, a value is a value for me only when I see the value of the value as valuable to me. It's kind of a lot of values there. But what that means is basically that value can be only if I'm able to see that value behind it. Only if I see the benefit of that value, it becomes value. It becomes a value for me. Say for example, if someone, it is very common these days, right? If someone has say honesty as a virtue, some people they have this good value of honesty. Others might come back and say, others will come to him and say, these days these things will not work, honesty will not work, too much of honesty will not work, you will not be able to survive. They kind of feed these things, small what I would call little drops of poison. It might look harmless in the beginning, and people might also think that in this world it is not possible to live honestly, so you will have to be a little bit of dishonest here and there. That is not true. It means they don't have any value for that value. And not only they don't have value for that value, they are also trying to convert others. So it is one thing that already we are not following it, but to convert others into being dishonest is even more. It's already we are doing some papa. We are taking on more papa by converting others as well. So we will have to understand that. Those advices, that kind of advices, Shastras call them as Asuropanishad. We know Upanishad, right? Upanishad is basically the words from Bhagavan as gathered by the rishis. But these kind of, basically those are teachings from Bhagavan. Asuropanishad is basically teachings from Asuras. So Shastras call them as Asuropanishads. And they term these people as Asuras. And what happens generally, if we are weak, we will follow their advice. Especially if we see the other person to be successful, materially successful, then we actually value the words of the other person, and then we try to follow that person, whatever the person says. So we'll have to be aware of it, we'll have to be wary of that. And all these 20 values, how will I be able to follow it? Only when I desire those things. The example is, see, when I value something, rather, when do I desire something? When do I desire something? Only when I value that. For example, I value a car that gives me a prestige, that gives me comfort, that gives me some kind of comfort and prestige for my life, or a big house. If I value it, then I start desiring it. When I don't value something, I will not desire for it. And once I start having desire for that, suppose if I start desiring for a big house, I have value, I think the big house will give me a lot of comfort, will give me a lot of happiness, then I desire for it, and once I desire for it, I will work for it, I will put in that effort. So in the same way, for all these values, I will have to first give it the value. I will have to say, this is something that I would want to have as my personality. Then the moment I find that I want to have this as my personality, I will desire for it. I will desire that to be my personality. Then once I desire for it, I will put in effort for it. So this is how we'll have to go. First, we'll have to find that this is valuable enough for me. And then once it is valuable enough for me, I will have to desire for it. And once I desire for it, I will put in the effort for it. And initially, remember, when these values are not there in me, I should have a small amount of guilt in me. These days, it is very common to be proud of those things. Some people are proud that if I get angry, things will turn around. Things will be, how the whole house will turn upside down. That is the opposite of that is the opposite end of the spectrum. We should have a little amount of guilt that we don't have these values, but we should not have too much of guilt also, because if we have too much of guilt, we will not be focusing on acquiring it. So have a little bit of guilt so that we are pursuing this, but not too much of guilt. And the Shastras, by going through these values and by teaching all these things, it actually gives a reflection of our mind. It basically, when we reflect, when we read the Shastras more and more, deeper and deeper, we will be able to get a reflection of our mind. We will be able to understand what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses. And then from there, we have to start improving. We have to look at things that we have to improve. As in corporate terms, they say opportunities for us to improve. So this is important. Remember, all these values are only for self-application only. It is not for judgment. It is for self-judgment only. It is for self-reflection. It is for self-judgment. The problem is, once we learn these values, we tend to look at others and then say, oh, this person does not have, he has got too much of Amanitvam, that person is Dambam, this person has got him doing Ahimsa. We try to judge others. The idea behind learning these things is not for that. It is for self-reflection, and it is not for judging or criticizing others. It is for our reflection and our improvement. The thing is, once we read these shastras, we will be able to know others even better. We will be able to see through others even better. But we should not use that for criticizing them. We should not use that for insulting them. We should just understand that these are how things are, this is how people are, these are how people are, but we should be focused on improving our own self. Once we know these kind of people, it also helps us to understand who are the satsanga, who belong to dutsanga. So we have to avoid that dutsanga. We'll have to stay away from them, and we identify the satsanga through these values and stay with them. The final thing about this is, remember bhakti. Bhakti is very important throughout. Bhakti has to be used as a means to fight failure. When we pursue all these values, multiple times we will fail. When we fail, we have to use bhakti as a means to come back. Pray Bhagavan that give me the strength to overcome this. Of course, I have failed, but give me the strength to overcome this. So we have to keep bhakti as a tool to fight and overcome all these failures and achieve all the values. So that is chapter 13, a quick summary. As I said, the next chapter that we will be taking up is chapter 16. Now we had seen only 4 slokas of chapter 13. Now we will be seeing the entire chapter 16. And then we will move on to the further chapters. So we will take chapter 16 today. Any questions or comments right now before we move on to chapter 16? Okay. Now, chapter 16 is called as Daivi Asuri Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. Daiva Asura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. See, we saw 20 values in 13th chapter. Now this will be almost like a continuation. Here again we will be seeing more values, but these values, there will be some maybe overlap, and there are some new values that Bhagavan would give them here, which we will see them in detail as well here. Again, you have to refer to that introduction that we had on chapter 13 in terms of how to inculcate these values. Remember, we had discussed about how to inculcate these values. There are 13 steps that we talked about: keeping an open mind, avoiding non-acceptance. I talked about Artha Darshanam, basically benefits of having that value. And then we saw Anartha Darshanam, the problems of not having this value. Satsanga as a tool to actually get these values. Doing some kind of pariharam whenever we actually falter, giving ourselves some punishment to overcome that, or pampering ourselves with some self-gift. We talked about 12 to 13 things of how to inculcate these values. So you may want to refer those. The same thing holds good for all these values as well. So, Daiva Asura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. So here Bhagavan is going to give good values or virtues as well as bad character. He is going to list them both. So, but before we go into those slokas, we will do some bit of vichara, some bit of introduction is needed. So we'll go through that. some of these terms we would have already discussed in Introduction to Vedanta, but we will go through that again. Remember, every jiva has got 3 gunas. Every jiva has got 3 gunas: sattva, rajas, tamas. So every one of us is made of a mixture of these 3 gunas: sattva, rajas, tamas. But only thing is that the percentage is different. Some people the sattva guna is predominant, some people the rajo guna is predominant, and for some people tamo guna is predominant. So whenever sattva guna is predominant, we call that person as sattva pradhana person, sattva pradhana. Similarly, rajo pradhana and tamo pradhana, depending on which is predominant, which guna is predominant. Now, tamo pradhana people, tamas, if they have too much of tamas, they are generally krodha pradhana people. They have this inner verupu. In Tamil we say verupu. Krodha pradhana people. They believe in parahimsa. They during doing harm to others is their nature, is their swabhava. Parahimsa. And generally these people, they get happy on seeing others unhappy. When others are unhappy, when they see that, they become generally happy. Or they get happy when they see other persons being harmed, either physically or even verbally. If some people is being harmed or insulted, they generally feel happy. These are tamo pradhana people, tama pradhana people. And generally these people, there is this feeling of taking revenge. I want to take revenge. That feeling will be constantly lingering. These are the characteristics of tama pradhana people. For example, some people, they take pleasure in hurting people. When they see any other animal or an insect or a bird, they want to throw a stone at a dog, they want to hit a cow with a stick, or they want to stamp an insect out. They generally take pleasure in hurting others. These are tamo pradhana people. What about rajo? Again, tamo pradhana people has got multiple definitions depending on what we are discussing. Here, as we are discussing values, this definition holds good for this particular context. Generally, tamo pradhana is also considered to be lazy. We have other characteristics to define tamo pradhana also. In this context of discussing values, we will say tamo pradhana people are basically krodha pradhana people. They like to hurt others and they feel happy when they see others unhappy. This is tamo pradhana. Then rajo pradhana is basically raga pradhana. These are people full of desires. They have a lot of desires, and for them fulfilling desires is their primary purpose. So if you ask them what is the purpose of their life, they would have a list of things to do, and they will say that is my purpose of life. And in the list of things are all their desires. I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. I have to see this, I have to achieve that. That's all. And generally they get happy on getting their desires fulfilled. Whenever they get their desires fulfilled, they feel happy. And to get their desires fulfilled, they don't mind hurting others. They don't generally hurt others. It is not their intention. But to get their desires fulfilled, if they have to hurt others, they wouldn't mind it. Hurting others is not their main intention. But they are selfish. So those are rajo pradhana people or raga pradhana people. Shastras define these two in this context here, in this manner. And Shastras call these two categories of people as Asuri Sampat. Sampat means wealth. Sampat means wealth. Asuri Sampat means people who have got these characteristics as their wealth. And Shastras call them as Asuras or Rakshasas. And remember, Asuras or Rakshasas are not defined by their physical features. Now, after reading Amar Chitrakatha, you will think that Asura should be dark, big, burly, big nose, horn in their head. Not necessarily. Shastras define the Asuras and Rakshasas through their gunas. Okay, not through their physical appearance. So these two categories of people are called as Asuri Sampat people. And people who have Sattva Pradhana people, those people, the Shastras call them as Daivi Sampat. Daivi Sampat. And what is this Sattva Pradhana? How do you recognize them? Sattva Pradhana people follow Ahimsa. They do not harm others. They do not harm others neither through body, nor through words, and nor through mind also. They don't have any ill feeling towards anybody. They have what is known as Shubha Vasana, good Vasana, Mangala Vasana. Their samskaras are good. They have good impressions in their mind. Their character is of good nature. We call that as Prakriti. Their Prakriti is Sattva Pradhana. Their nature is Sattva Pradhana. So Asuri Sampat is basically Rajo Pradhana and Tamo Pradhana. Daivi Sampat is Sattva Pradhana. Now Bhagavan is going to give two lists. Daivi Sampat, basically gunas that we need to bring into our personality, that we need to acquire. Daivi Sampat. And Bhagavan is also going to give Asuri Sampat, gunas or qualities that we need not bring. We need not bring because it is already there in our personality. Many of these Asuri Sampat are already there in our personality. We need not bring it from anywhere. Only thing we have to do is we need to remove them from our character. And if it is not there, we should ensure that it does not become our personality. So those are Asuri Sampat. One may question, why Asuri Sampat? Is it not enough if I know what I should acquire? We need to understand Asuri Sampat also, because we need to understand what is it that we should not bring into our personality also. If we don't do any spiritual sadhana, the Asuri Sampat by nature, by itself will become our personality. If we just don't do any sadhana, if we say we are kind of agnostics, people might these days are very common, atheists and agnostics. If we don't do any spiritual sadhana, by nature it is easy to catch all this Asuri Sampat. So we should know what we should not acquire. We should understand who is our enemy first. People around us are not our enemy. Our relations are not our enemy. Our neighbors are not our enemy. Our colleagues are not our enemy. Our own character is our enemy. Our own character, our own Asuri Sampat is our enemy. That we should understand. Again, when we are discussing this, Daivi Sampat, Asuri Sampat, this is not for judging others, it is for self-reflection only. everybody, every one of us is actually have got some Daivi Sampat. We always have some Daivi Sampat. But we also have some Asuri Sampat. The question is, how long are we in Daivi Sampat mode? How long are we in Asuri Sampat mode? We have to reflect. And we'll have to see how we can extend that Daivi Sampat. Then the next question will come, if I am extending my Daivi Sampat or if I am acquiring this Daivi Sampat, what is the benefit? What is the benefit of having this Daivi Sampat? See, Vedas have certain injunctions, right? We call them as orders, we call them as Vidhi. There is something called Vidhi and there is something called Nishedam. Vedas talk about do's and don'ts. Why should we not? So, Vedas have certain injunctions, orders that are Vidhi or do's, and they have some Nishedams or don'ts. So, people who have this Shubhavasana, they will have interest or what we call as pravritti. There will be some pravritti for them in performing these vidhis. Whoever has got this Shubhavasana, their samskaras are good. If their samskaras are good, they will automatically perform these vidhis. And by nature, if people have got the Shubhavasana, the Shubh Samskara, they will not have any interest in performing all these nishedams or don'ts, or they will have nivritti towards this nishedams. They will have pravritti towards vidhi and they will have nivritti towards nishedams. So, having this Daivi Sampat more and more, we will be able to live according to the Vedas, and by living according to the manual, we will be able to achieve the objective of our life better. Whenever a good is produced, a manual is produced together. Similarly, when the world was created, the manual was created along with the world, which is the Vedas. And if we live according to the manual, we will be able to achieve the objective or the purpose of our life. And to live according to the manual, to live according to the do's and don'ts, a person having this Daivi Sampat, having this Shubha Samskara, Shubha Vasana, that person will be able to easily adapt himself or herself to the do's and don'ts. So that is the benefit of having this Daivi Sampat. And remember, another thing is, remember when we are here to get this final knowledge. Ultimately, the end goal is to get this knowledge of Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi. And why we are not able to get it? Because our ignorance is covering this knowledge. We have to remove the ignorance to get this knowledge. The knowledge is that I am Brahman. Ignorance is I am the body-mind complex. So I think I am the body-mind complex, whereas the Shastra says I am the Brahman. I am the all-pervading consciousness principle. That's what the Shastra says. But I see myself as limited to this body and mind. So I am ignorant. Now I have to remove this ignorance to get that knowledge. And Shastra says typically there are three obstructions. Three obstructions when we try to remove this ignorance. Three obstructions. Number one, Pramana Asambhavana. Pramana Asambhavana is there is an issue. Pramana means instrument. Asambhavana or fault. So there is a fault in the instrument of that knowledge. Knowledge is also, an instrument of knowledge is also known as Karanam. So what is the instrument of knowledge that we use? We use these 5 sense organs plus the mind plus intellect as the instrument for gaining knowledge. Suppose if I say this ball is red in color, that book is brown in color, the wall is white in color. What am I using to get this knowledge? I am using my eyes. Eye as an instrument to understand the color and the shape of the object. So eye is my instrument of my knowledge. Similarly, when I say, okay, there is a flight going past me, going past now, that means I'm using my ears as an instrument to get that knowledge that there is a flight passing by. So the sense organs are my instruments of knowledge. In the same manner, the mind is also an instrument of knowledge. My intellect is also an instrument of knowledge. Shastra says the problem that we can get when we are trying to remove ignorance is, if my instrument is faulty, if my eyes are faulty, if I have got color blindness, then I will not be able to differentiate between colors. So my instrument can be faulty, and therefore my knowledge that I get can also be wrong. For example, another example is cataract in the eye. Cataract in the eye, so is the reason that I am not able to read the book. So in spite of the subject, that is eye, and the object, which is the book, both are being there. The subject and object are there, but I am not able to get the knowledge. That's because my eyes, if there is a cataract in my eyes, I am not able to read it, and therefore I am not able to remove my ignorance. So there is an issue in my pratyaksha pramana. Pramana meaning instrument of knowledge. Pratyaksha pramana means here it is one of the 5 sense organs. And whenever there is a fault or a problem or an issue or a flaw in my instrument of knowledge, then 2 things can happen. One, I can be completely ignorant. I may not have any knowledge about anything. So I might completely be still in ajnana state, in ignorance state. Or I could have a misunderstanding of things. I could read it, but I could read it wrongly. Therefore, I could get a viparita jnana. So either I will be able to be in the state of ajnana, or I could have a viparita jnana. So this is because I have got a faulty pramana. Sometimes, for example, when someone speaks, instead of taking the meaning from the words that they speak, what I will do, we will try to read the intentions behind those words. We will say, so we will leave that pratyaksha pramana. Whatever the words that are there which is evident, I will leave it. And I will rely on my anumana pramana, inference. I will infer things. And by inference, I will arrive at a knowledge. Again, that could be totally wrong also. It could be a viparita jnana also. And if by actually inferring the people behind, and not taking their words, but by taking their intent behind things, generally most of the times we will get it wrong only. We will get it wrong, but we will not accept it also. We will say, oh, this time I was wrong, but mostly I am right. We'll never try to accept that there is a fault in our way of understanding. We will continue to do that. We will not agree that there is a problem in our pramana, in the instrument of knowledge that we use. We have used it wrongly. We will not accept it. And because of which relations also get spoilt, because we use the wrong pramana. Instead of the pratyaksha pramana, we use lot of anumana pramana. When we see, especially in WhatsApp text and others, when you can't identify the tone, When you can't, we will always try to infer it wrongly, saying that the other person is trying to insult me, it's actually not giving me enough things. We will try to add more than what the actual person says or means it. And because of which our relations get spoiled, our understanding gets spoiled, our mind gets spoiled, but we will not mind it. We will continue to live the way we are because our ego is high. Anyway, now for this Atma Jnana, the pramanam for the Atma Jnana is not our five sense organs. The object of our knowledge, the instrument of knowledge for Atma Jnana are mainly Guru and Shastras. Shastras, Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads, those are my pramana. Guru and Shastras. So we have to understand, if the Guru teaches Dvaita, that the world is actually real, what does Dvaita philosophy teach? Dvaita philosophy teaches that the world is real. And it also says you and Brahman are different. That is Dvaita philosophy. So, if the person gives importance to all the Dvaita Vakyas within the Upanishad. So remember, the Vedas have got Dvaita Vakyas as well as Advaita Vakyas. So if the person gives importance to the Dvaita Vakyas, then for them it is called as, we could say them as Pramana Asambhavana, because they have not been able to use the instrument of knowledge properly. And because of which it has caused the obstruction for getting that jnana of Aham Brahmasmi. So this is Pramana Asambhavana, one way of obstruction of getting that knowledge or removing ignorance. Pramana Asambhavana. So we can actually extend. The second one is basically Prameya Sambhavana. Basically there are only three things. One is instrument, subject, object. We had seen instrument faulty. The other fault could also be in the object also. The other one can also be in the subject. So the second one is basically we are talking about Prameya Asambhavana, or the fault in the object. For example, my eyes are good. We go back to that eyes book example. My eyes are good. But if the book itself is closed with a cloth or a paper, then there is no point in rubbing my eyes, there is no point in cleaning my eyes to get that knowledge. Because the fault is not with the pramana. The fault is with prameya, object. And in Shastras, Tarka Shastra, actually it talks in detail about how and when this prameya asambhavana can happen. How and when this issue or flaw or fault in the object can happen. For example, if the object is too far away, then the fault can happen. I see an object at a distance. I am not able to make it out whether it is a cow or a horse or a donkey. There is no fault in my eyes, but just that the object is too far. Then I am not able to make it out. Or if the object is too close, if too close to my eyes, I am not able to read. The words are not clear. So if the object is too far, or if the object is too near, or if there is darkness around, there is book, the book is also open, my eyes are also open, my eyes are good, I am able to read, I can read, but if there is darkness, then also I cannot read. So that is also another reason why an obstruction can happen. Now if we apply this with regards to the self-knowledge, the knowledge about Brahman, the knowledge about Brahman, then the Brahman is self-effulgent. The Brahman is self-effulgent, but it is so subtle. It's a subtler than subtle. It's called Sukshmatvam. And if the object of knowledge is so subtle, then we will not be able to get that knowledge. Because normally when I see I have lost my keys, suppose if I have lost my keys or my eyeglasses, I generally search around the house to see whether my keys are there, my eyeglasses are there. But then later on I realize that my eyeglasses are actually on top of my forehead, and I have been searching around it all through the house, the entire house. What has been the cause that I have not been able to get this? Because it has been too close to me that I have not been able to realize that it is there. So here is an example of when the object is too close to me, I am not able to realize that it is. Or when the keys are in my pant pocket or my trousers pocket and I am not able to, and I have been searching all through the house, then also we miss it. And we need, whenever it is too close also, we need to take more effort. So this is Prameya Asambhavana. So then the third one is basically Pramatir Asiddhi, or the subject is there. A subject has got a problem. So if the suppose only if the subject is there, Pramata, Prameyam, Pramanam. Pramata is subject. The subject is there. Only if the subject is there, the Pramanam, the instrument, can be used to understand the object, Prameyam. So if a student goes to a class, say he is only a 5th standard student, grade 5, class 5, whatever, and this person goes to a MSc physics class, obviously he will not be able to understand. He could be getting the words, this person could be able to understand the words, but he will not be able to understand the meaning behind it. So the intellect of the person is not ready. If the intellect of the person is not ready, or if the person is not qualified also, then he cannot be a Pramata, or there is a problem with the Pramatir Asiddhi, we say. Only if the subject or the person who is supposed to get the knowledge is also qualified, if the object is also not too close or not too far away, and if it is available for experience, and only if you have the right instrument, Pramanam, then only we will be able to remove this ignorance. Only then this jnana, this knowledge will go through. So in this case of this Vedantic knowledge, it is not just the intellect and mind that needs to be ready and qualified. It is not just I got the intellect, I will be able to understand the words of Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi. I am able to understand the meaning. That is not good enough. There is something more. That is known as Sadhana Chatushtayam. We had already seen Sadhana Chatushtayam. Sadhana Chatushtayam is Viveka, Vairagya, Shatka Sampatti and Mumukshutvam. We had seen that in the introduction to Vedanta. We will be again seeing it. This Sadhana Chatushtayam is also called as Daivi Sampat. Daivi Sampat by Bhagavan refers to Sadhana Chatushtayam, or the necessary qualifications that one needs to have to be able to grasp this knowledge of Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi and be able to apply that, make that knowledge as part of one's personality. And whatever that has to be removed from our personality, whatever that has to be taken away from us, whatever that should not be brought into our personality is called as Asuri Sampat. As I said, Sampat means wealth. We think money, house, all these possessions, car, relations, people, we say that these are our wealth. Though that wealth will not give us peace of mind. There will be always some kind of irritations, issues in all those wealth. But these good virtues, this Daivi Sampat, will give us peace of mind. All other things are all external. They can come, they can leave. But once these good qualities become part of our personality, nobody can take it away from us. Money, somebody else can take away. Relations, somebody else can take away. Possessions, somebody can take away. We can lose things in our life. But the good qualities that once we acquire, and if nobody can take it away unless we decide to drop them. So, these are called as, these are the real wealth. Wealth is something that has to be within our control. And only the good qualities, Daivi Sampat, can be termed as wealth. Now with this introduction, we will go on to the sloka from the next class. Any questions or comments? I saw there was a question. Why should we not convert to something that will bring happiness and peace on this earth? I'm not able to get the question or the context behind the question. Can you explain, please? Okay, Manisha ji? Okay. Okay, we will see this in the next class. If there is still this doubt persists, then we'll see them in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimahishah. Gobrahmanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.